Like I said, today's topic is supporting children who are deaf and hard of hearing in mainstream settings. Hopefully, you've seen the learning objectives, which is what attracted you to this webinar. So before we discuss how to make decisions about mainstreaming and choosing the appropriate school, and before we discuss characteristics of supportive schools and strategies, I want you to type in chat, why do you want children who are DHH, deaf and hard of hearing, to mainstream? What is your motivation? What is your long-term desired outcome? If you are a parent, type in chat and tell us why you want your child to go to a mainstream setting. If you are a professional, tell us why you think children who are deaf and hard of hearing should be in the mainstream setting. Go ahead. I will wait a couple minutes so we can get all responses. Excellent response. I want to set him up for success with the rest of the world. I want for him to experience normal life and learn how to integrate himself in that world. I want my child in mainstream so that he feels confident for the rest of his life in the rest of the world. They can just do it. Deafness should not stop my child from learning. Um, Lead a normal life, never feel left out. Whoa, lots of answers. Okay, let me read carefully. Confidence, full life experience, ability to obtain the same results as typically hearing peers, learn to read and talk like normal kids, included not just at home but everywhere. It's their right to be able to mainstream. Very nice. No limits. Absolutely, Telmo. Brought up as a normal person, equal opportunity. A child who is deaf and hard of hearing is a normal person, and you would like the child to develop like his typical age level peers. Equal opportunity. Let them feel as the others. Absolutely. Who said that? Somebody knows I'm going to say this. Sonal. Everybody wants an enviable life. Absolutely. We'll talk more about this. They deserve mainstream schools because they should have the confidence to face the world of sound, and mix with the normal world too and live a normal life. Interaction and communicate like a normal child. They should not feel different, develop confidence. You want your child to advocate. Near normal hearing is their birthright. All right, this is fantastic. Thank you all for sharing. This sets us up very nicely for the next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about these words, which you will hear, and I have heard from families and professionals. People refer to something called a special school. A special school is generally a program that is providing specialized intervention or instruction or training to children who are deaf or hard of hearing. That is typically what a special school is, or children with disabilities. Um, Mainstream school is a school that any child might go to. Normal school and regular school almost always refer to a general education school. I tend to stay away from these words because by using the word normal, it is making a judgment. Honestly, nobody in this world is normal. We all have some abnormality in our behavior, in our physical being, in everything. So I personally avoid the word normal. It is also indicating to the child and everybody else that they are going to a normal school, even though they themselves are not normal. So, just food for thought as you reflect on how you talk about mainstreaming with your children, your parents, your team. Same thing with the regular school. So, a special education school is an irregular school, a bad school. I don't know. Think about that. Another word that I heard quite a bit was integration. I want my child to integrate, which is the opposite of segregate. So just keep that in mind. And I want my child to be included. So the word inclusion. Moving forward, I will use the words general education program, referring to a school where children of different abilities, typically developing, atypically developing children are going together, and special education program, children where they are received, where there is specialized services for children with additional needs. Okay, so the next slide, take a second and look at it, comes from Professor Eric Carter out of Vanderbilt University, and the image was taken from a website that is linked below. He talks about the concept of belonging, and belonging is more than inclusion. So there is exclusion, where some people are not included in the group. There is segregation, where we have one group of people and then this other group of people who might be different than this group of people are segregated. Then we have integration, where they are in the group but they're sort of by themselves. Then we have inclusion, where okay, now they are a part of the group, they are throughout the group. And then Professor Carter goes on to talk about belonging. This is their group. They are not guests in this group, or nobody's doing them a favor by including them in this group. This is where they belong. So thinking about this scheme, I want you to think about what is the goal of this, your child or your student mainstreaming. What do you want to achieve at the end of it? So think to yourself and complete this sentence. I want the child to mainstream so that, you don't have to type this in or anything, just think to yourself. Mainstreaming is a tool to a broader achievement of some sort. So think about it this way, right? I want to lose weight so I can have a healthier life. The goal is healthier life. Lose weight is how I'm going to do it. So mainstream is the how, and what is it that you want? So you want inclusion, you want confidence, you want opportunity. Think about those areas as we move forward, okay? So today we will focus on how can we facilitate inclusion and belonging? How can we support enviable lives? Those of you who've attended our webinars in the past know I talk about this all the time. Enviable lives is a concept that comes from Professor Anne Turnbull out of oh my gosh, I'm blanking, Kentucky University, Kansas University. And she talks about an enviable life is a life that you would want for yourself, a life that is productive and that is included. Think about the children you work with as professionals. Think about the children you have as parents. Are they living enviable lives? Would you want to live their life? And the goal is, hopefully, their life is so rich and so productive and so happy that you would want to be living their life. We are talking about listening and spoken language development, we are talking about mainstreaming, but I think at the end of it, the goal is for all of us to live enviable lives. All right, take a second to yourself, think about it, make notes. And now we are going to move into the how to do this. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the Q&A, or if you have comments, put them in the chat. I'm going to take a sip of water while you all do that. Okay, moving on. The decision-making process related to mainstreaming can seem very complex, can seem very overwhelming. And what I hope to do today is provide you with some questions that will help you make a decision. Okay, so the first step in this decision-making process is to think about what is my child's current functioning level and trajectory. What are the desired outcomes? So if you are a parent, I want you to be thinking about this question. If you are a professional, I want you to have the parent think about this question. Let me say this right now. We as professionals are the sidekicks. We are the supporting cast. We are the on the side. The parents are the captains, the leaders, the directors of this team. We as professionals are serving the parents, working with the parents. We never want to make a decision for the parent. Our job is to provide the information and help parents make the decision. So the first question for asking is, what is my child's current functioning level and trajectory? What does that mean? That's a broad question. So I encourage you to think about the following questions. How does my child communicate? Does my child communicate using spoken language? Does my child communicate using sign and spoken language, or gestures in spoken language, or maybe cued speech, or maybe writes out what the child is thinking? Whatever that might be, create a sentence in your brain. My child communicates by, fill that in. The second question you want to ask yourself is, how does she, my child, understand? What does my child understand when strangers are talking to her? So this is a question, about receptive language. So the sentence you want to complete, and Aladni is very helpfully writing those out for you in the chat, is, my child, when strangers are talking to my child, she understands blank. And maybe all you are writing is 50% of what they're saying. She understands everything if she knows the topic. She understands everything if we have practiced it before. She understands nothing. I have to interpret for my child. Whatever that is, think about it. When strangers are talking to my child, she understands blank. The next one is about speech intelligibility as well as expressive language. Do strangers understand what your child is saying? When my child speaks to strangers, they blank. Look puzzled, feel sorry for her, ask questions, don't understand anything, look to me for answers. Think about the behaviors. Notice that I'm not saying go do a test and look at a standard score. I'm asking you to think about how the child functions in general. Thank you, Aladini, for putting that in. The next question is, how does my child access information? And access is in big bold letters because this is a key concept. Access is the act of taking in information either through your eyes because you are seeing it, or through your ears because you are hearing it, or a combination of something. So access to information is the child getting information through listening? Is it lip reading? Is it reading the words? Is it signs and gestures? Observe your child if you don't know the answer to this. Professionals, observe the children you are working with if you don't know the answer to this. In a regular play setting or in a storytelling setting, how does the child access information? Because this is an important piece of information to figure out what kind of school and what kind of supports your child will need. And then the final question, probably the most important question: how does my child learn? Does my child learn through repetition? Does my child learn through observation? Does my child learn through facilitated learning, right? Like somebody teaching the child one on one. All of this goes into the current functioning level and trajectory. And then after thinking all of this, you need to revisit what are your desired outcomes? What do you want the child to be able to do in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? I know this can be an overwhelming concept for many parents, but you have to think that far to know how we are going to get there. You have to plan, 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 and know that you might need to change it. But instead of a laid back attitude, we'll go where this takes us, this is where we want to get, and this is why we are going to do all the things needed between now and then, can be a really helpful way to plan. Okay, take a second and write this down or take notes or however you want to do it. If you have any questions or comments, put the comments in the chat, put the questions in the Q&A. All right, do we have a decision yet? No, we don't. We just have the beginnings of a decision-making process. So after we have considered the current functioning level and trajectory and the desired outcomes, we want to explore what supports the child will need to keep up, continue to develop at the same rate right now, catch up, develop faster than everybody else so the child can catch up, or move up, which is okay, the child is never going to be age appropriate. That's okay. But are they making progress in life? Are they learning new skills? Keep up, catch up, and move up comes from profiles of potential, a concept that I wrote a chapter about with Dr. Mary Ellen Nevins. There we go. Mary Ellen Nevins. And I will share a link to that in our on our website with other resources. You also want to think about, where could my child receive these supports? So at this point, you're still making a decision about a school. You haven't even said, is it going to be a mainstream school or a special education program, a general education program or a special education program? So once you figure out where the child currently is, you want to figure out what supports the child needs, and then figure out who and where will this child receive supports. So if your child needs intensive speech and language enrichment, you might be better off going to a program that has trained teachers of the deaf and trained speech language pathologists providing this daily instruction. Maybe a school for the deaf, a special education program focusing on children who are deaf or hard of hearing is where your child needs to be. Maybe all your child needs is a little bit of language support. So then maybe they can be in a general education classroom all day with some additional tuition from a special educator, from a deaf educator, from a speech language pathologist. The next thing you want to take into account is, what are my child's rights within my state or country's special education laws, if your state or country has these. So in the US, there is IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. In India, there is Persons with Disability as well as Disability Act, as well as the Right to Education Act, which in conjunction provides children who need special education supports certain rights. Just because there is a law doesn't mean the child automatically gets the rights. What has to happen finally is you, as the parent, have to advocate for the child. I work with many parents here in the US, here in Champaign, where I could just go to a meeting and talk on behalf of the families, but that doesn't work. It's the parents who need to advocate for themselves. Oh, excellent. We have a note saying currently it is the RPWD Act of 2016. Excellent. We will link to the current act and what the rights currently are within those acts. So that's the overall decision making process. If you have any comments, type them in chat. If you have any questions, put them in the Q&A. I want to move on to, after you've made this decision and you say, okay, my child is ready to go into a general education program, a mainstream classroom, how do you choose a school? So my advice to you would be, if you have the choice to choose a school, maybe your child goes into a specific school because that's the area that you live in, or that's the school your child has to go to, or maybe there are some constraints. But if you have the choice to choose a school, look for a school that is appropriate for the child's current functioning and needs. So I had a student long time ago. She's actually applying to colleges this year. So she's finishing up high school. She's finishing up her 12th grade. She was deaf and gifted. And it was important that she go to a school that was going to work with her on her language needs, but also challenge her given all her academic, cognitive, and creative capacities. So for her, that was a private school for the gifted with extra support for language. Choose a school that is accessible to the child. So I once had a student who wanted to go to a school that had no walls, everything was open. And that was a great system for many children. But because of that system, what was happening in the classroom was not accessible to this child. The child couldn't learn, couldn't communicate, and those expectations were not appropriate for the child. Choose a school that wants to have your child, not has to have your child. The buy in, the attitude from the school is critical, because if they are not going to accept the child and the expectations that come with that child, it's going to be a tough road for you as a parent or a professional, or the child, him or herself. Choose a school that has staff that is interested and willing to learn. I would rather pick a teacher who has no knowledge or no experience with hearing loss over a teacher who says, oh, I had a student 10 years ago, I know everything about this. That is a dangerous place to be. Choose a school that is willing to engage in collaboration and communication. I will take a school any day that says, we've never had a child who is deaf and hard of hearing, but we are willing to learn how we can best support this child. that's gonna probably be a good fit. Choose a school that has a philosophy and practice of inclusion. There are many schools that say we are an inclusive school. Okay, what does that mean? What do you do to actively include children in your school and moreover give them a sense of belonging? Okay, this was a lot of information and hopefully a lot of food for thought. There might be some of you who at this point are thinking, this is a unicorn. This is not possible. How can I get all of this in one school? It's entirely possible you won't. But think about what are the most important factors for you and for your child and go with that. I mean, honestly, in the 10 years that I've been supporting children who are mainstreaming, I have never once found a school that has all 6 factors. But children do well when you are tailoring it, individualizing it to their needs, which is the next thing we are going to talk about. So, this was a really tough one for me. 5 characteristics of a supportive school. The least I could come up with was 8, but I've tried to limit them to 5. So, let's talk more about this. Take a second and read this, and I'll talk about each of them. Helani, we have a Q&A, but I can't seem to open it. So when you get a chance, will you open it and we will answer it at the end. Okay, 5 characteristics of a supportive school. A school that takes an interest in your child and her progress and has high expectations. We don't want the school doing a favor to this child. Oh, poor deaf kid. Sure, they can come to our school. That's not what this is about. This is about the child going to school, learning, making progress, and achieving his or her personal best. A supportive school understands the impact of hearing loss on academic and social development and thus individualizes learning expectations. If this is a child who struggles to memorize a 20-sentence poem, then maybe the school is smart enough to say, okay, let's pick a poem that has a chorus or a recurring 2-line set that we want you to memorize, and you can read the first 2 lines of each stanza. If the skill is memorizing, the child is working on memorizing, but according to his or her abilities. So learning expectations are individualized. If you're in a country that has an individualized education plan, like the US has an IEP, this is exactly the kind of information you would put into an IEP under accommodations and modifications. You want a supportive school utilizes a team approach and collaborates within and outside the school. So a school that says, okay, we will gather our resources and we will work with this child. If your child is working with somebody else outside, we would like input from them as well. By multiple people being involved in a child's therapy, it actually helps the child get similar information, similar targets all around her, and that supports learning. A supportive school has staff that engages in learning, collaboration, and communication. So if the staff doesn't know much about hearing loss, hopefully they're going to learn about it. If a staff is willing to collaborate, say the teacher collaborates with the speech language pathologist, they are going to learn more. A staff that is willing to communicate the good, communicate the difficult, communicate the I have no idea what I should do. And the staff, the behavior of the staff often is coming from the attitude that the leadership has. So if the principal or the assistant principal is saying, yes, we are going to do this together, there is a good chance the staff is going to support you as well. But if the principal or assistant principal is saying, oh no, this sounds too difficult, but sure, send your kid to school, it will be difficult for the staff to engage as well. Finally, a supportive school facilitates inclusion and belonging and ensures a positive experience for your child. If a child is not happy going to school, it is not the child's fault. The child isn't unteachable. We haven't figured out as teachers, as professionals, how to teach this child. A child not liking the school is not the child's fault. Let me say it one more time. When a child is not enjoying the school experience, it is not the child's responsibility to just buck up and be happy. It is the school's responsibility to create a positive experience. Professionals, if the child is not happy at school, it is not the parent's fault for not making the child learn to sit and attend. This is a child who clearly learns differently. It is our responsibility as professionals to help meet the needs of this child. Okay, that's my soapbox for today. Questions, comments, thoughts? Kanchan, I see your hand is raised. Unlike our online courses, in the webinars, please type your questions in the Q&A so we can better manage them. So now we have this big goal. We are going to live and create an enviable life. We are going to do it by choosing a school very strategically. Once we've done that, once the child is in the mainstream setting, what are some ways we can continue to support the child? This is something that can be done by parents, by professionals who are specialized in hearing loss, as well as those who are specialized in teaching, general education teaching. So the first thing is consistent progress monitoring of listening, language, and academic development. You want to know how the child was doing at the beginning of the school year, how things are going, 6, 12, 3 months, 6 or 12 weeks, or 3 months into the school year. What is happening in the next 3 months? And this is not just how is the child performing on a unit test, which are also popular in India, or how the child is doing on standardized tests, which are also popular in the US. This is about the day to day. When my child brings home homework, can the child do it independently, or is the child saying, the teacher didn't teach us this at all? Which could mean the teacher taught, but the child couldn't learn. It could be because of access, it could be because of language, it could be because many different things. So, one of the strategies to provide over and over is pre teaching. If you know the child is going to learn about planets, maybe talk about them, maybe see a documentary about it, maybe watch a cartoon about it. Help the child learn the words that will be related to the planets. So that's pre teaching. When the child is learning about planets, review the concepts, the words, the lesson with the child. And maybe, if this is a child who doesn't always remember what is taught, reteach it in a few months, revisit it so that the child can practice one more time and learn the vocabulary, the words that go with it, the background knowledge as well. Provide special focus towards the language of math and science and social studies. I'll give you an example. So, language of math, the words numerator and denominator are important math words. You can always say the number on the top and the number on the bottom. But when the child is doing a worksheet and it says equalize the denominator, what does that mean? The child might know when you say make the bottom number same, but the child might not know what it means to equalize the denominator. So the language of math, the language of science, the language of social studies requires extra attention, especially once your children are past third standard or third grade. Developing self advocacy in children is important to continue to support children in mainstream settings. At some point, they have to take responsibility for their learning, for their listening. So if a hearing aid isn't working, they need to raise their hand and ask for help. If the battery needs to be changed, they need to do that. If they don't understand something, hopefully by the time they are in fourth and fifth grade, they are going to go up to the teacher and say, I didn't understand this. Can you tell me again? I have friends who are deaf in college who did this all the time. They had to see the professor a little bit longer, a little bit extra to make sure they were following along. Today, they are engineers and audiologists and doctors and chartered accountants and so on and so forth. Self advocacy skills in children make for independent, confident, included adults. And finally, you have to be very mindful and intentional about interprofessional collaboration so that you can individualize the child's learning. So if there is a big team around this child, okay, what's happening at school? Oh, you are learning about condensation and evaporation. Okay, those could be some of our speech words this week because we are practicing the sound sh, condensation, evaporation. Maybe the reading teacher is saying, oh, okay, condensation and evaporation. Let's talk about the final suffix tion that says shun. Sometimes SION says shun. Do you know the rules for that? Integrated, intentional, interprofessional collaboration is going to help support your child. Parents, if you are thinking, oh my God, my professionals are never going to do that, think about how you can talk to them about this or how you can find a professional who is going to talk to them about this. Or, come find us and we will help you write a script to go talk to your professionals. That was about the academic part of it. But remember, we are thinking about enviable lives. So when supporting children in the mainstream, we are worried not just about their listening and language and academics, but also their social emotional well being. Do these children have friends? Are they being bullied? Are they included? Do they have a sense of belonging? One strategy could be helping children find their island of competence. I couldn't remember whose concept this is, but the concept is each child is good at something. We have to find out what it is and help that child build an island of competence, something they are good at. So I know students of mine who have gone on from a special school for the deaf to a general education program, those of who did sports or did drama, theater, some additional activity where they were equal to their classmates have had better social emotional success. Because this is not about, oh, that's the kid with the special education needs. It's always, oh, this is the kid in my swimming class, or this is the kid in my football team. And it makes a big difference. Another strategy is to educate staff and children about deafness and communication needs. Just like I said, children need to learn self advocacy. The people around them should learn how to support them. If we are saying inclusion and belonging, children in the classroom should know to look at the child, to get attention, whatever the child's needs are. Make sure that captioning is on the video that is being watched in the class. It is not just the deaf child's responsibility. It could be the class responsibility. And finally, one strategy is to aim to thrive. To thrive as in grow, blossom, bloom, and not just survive. It shouldn't just be sink or swim, right? I threw you in the water of the mainstream. I hope you swim and not sink. That's a survival thinking. I want you to think about the child thriving, blossoming in a mainstream setting. So that's the aim. So, whatever goes with that aim is the strategy we should be using. The next slide is pretty much just a summary. What it takes to be successful in the mainstream. I wanted to, have it be a one snapshot that you all could take with you, which is this is my definition of what it takes to be successful. And note, success means different for every family and every child. I think it takes a team of parents and professionals working together, guided by the desired outcome. I think it takes realistic, high expectations that will help the child keep up, catch up, or move up. I think it takes a positive attitude, grit, as in a can do attitude, and a growth mindset. If you're not familiar with Dweck's work on growth mindset, please look into it. We will also post a video and a link to tell you more about a growth mindset. So, a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. I think a growth mindset is good for parents, for children, as well as the staff. To put growth mindset in a very simple statement is a growth mindset teaches you the power of yet. I can't do that yet, which means I can't do it today, but one day I'm going to be able to do it. And then I think it's very important for children and parents to have role models, somebody who's done this before, because for most children, they are the only deaf child in their school. There is nobody else who looks like them, who talks like them, who wears a device like them. So to have role models, children who've done this before, parents who've done this before, mentors who can guide them in this journey, as well as support networks. Networks that are going to help children and parents and staff members build a learning community and grow together. I think there is no room for competition between children and parents and staff in this scenario. The only way forward, the only way up is together in collaboration.